why we feel we are extremely lucky. The first, over which we had no control, was our parents. Sam and Bessie on my side, Harry and Jean on Sylvia's. I couldn't have been more lucky, personally, to have such wonderful parents. I was an only child, and the reasons for that were mainly the war, that my dad was off for 5 years, and if Mum had another one, they'd be in trouble. The other reason was, if anybody, and some people here remember how we lived, we were all in the East End, we were all Jewish, we had no money, and we used to live in Cannon Street in the top floor flat, and there was no room to swing a cat. We had 3 tiny rooms, and I had a bedroom, it had a bed in it, and we had a 3-piece suite, and there was no roof.
Just move it a bit.
Tiny room, about 6 foot by 4, and you had to be an escapologist to actually get in and out. There would have been no room for another member. There was no money for another member, and I'm sure that if I'd had a brother or sister, I would have certainly never gone on to have an education. So although I envy all the friends I see who have got brothers and sisters, I was an only child. Sylvia had 2 sisters, Sue, who's in Australia, and Binny, who unfortunately died recently, but she had a slightly different problem because she had these 2 sisters.
What did he say?
Now, one thing, you might think I was spoilt. I must be honest and reveal some secrets. I had breakfast in bed every day of my life until I got married. My mum used to quietly come into my room and just say, "Harry," and breakfast would be there. At weekends, I used to have dinner in bed as well. I assumed that everybody lived like that. And I remember when I married Sylvia and we went home for the first time, I actually stayed in bed. But at 8 o'clock in the evening, I thought, it's funny. But seriously, that is the truth. And I just hope that I wasn't spoiled through that. So I had these wonderful parents, and someone told me a story that typifies my father. Alan Jacobs will know. Another very close friend since I was 5 was a guy called Ivor Bornstein. And it was my 8th birthday. And my dad took me up to Fleet Street, and Wally Hammond had a sports shop in Fleet Street. And my dad took me in, and for my 8th birthday, he bought me a table tennis bat. In those days, table tennis was wonderful. And he saw my friend Ivor Bornstein standing next to me, and he bought him one. He didn't have 2 halfpence for a penny. And I couldn't remember that, but Ivor, who I saw recently when I was just talking, he told me that, and he said he's never forgotten. And that is my dad. Well, that's my mum and my dad. The next reason why we had such a wonderful life was relatives. And on my side, in the East End, we had 2 families. We had the Bennetts and the Burkes. And the Bennetts were my Auntie Mary and Uncle Henry, and they had 3 children. Siddy's here, one of my favourite cousins. The other 2 children, Willie unfortunately died recently, and Kitty died a bit earlier. But Kitty is represented by her husband Mickey and her lovely family, Sarah. Will you put your hands up when I talk to you? And Mickey and Kitty visited my dad every week when he was in a home for years, and it's something I've never forgotten. And again, it's something why I feel I've been so lucky. On Sylvia's side, her relatives here, there's Stuart, and there's Ross, and there's Vic, and Maureen and Jerry. And again, these are close relatives who we've been fortunate enough to have and love. And again, we're talking about sort of 70 years. So that's some of the immediate family. And in the East End of London, we're all cheek to jowl. And I mentioned on my side Henry and Mary Bennett, and of course there's Alan Polly Burks, and there's my very cousin here, Stephen. And again, I remember going round to the house. Again, they didn't have 2 halfpence for a penny, but the house was warm and friendly. And in those days, none of us realised we were poor, because everybody had nothing. I unfortunately had something which I could not admit to. Our house was used as an air raid, an ambulance centre in the war. And in our tiny flat, we had a sink in every room, and we had a bath. I could not admit that I had a bath. I would have had no street credibility. No one in East London had a bath. And when I come to my friends, every Friday you used to go to the public baths. You used to have tuppence to go in, and a penny to the guy with the water, so you could have hot water for number 8, or wherever you were. Yep, but there we are. I had a bath, but I couldn't admit it. So that's relatives. The next thing is friends. And you've got to be incredibly lucky. My oldest friend here is Alan Jacobs, if you raise your hand. Now, how these things work out, only him upstairs knows. I was evacuated in Bishop Auckland. And we came here at the age, I was 5. I came to London on a Saturday. And I remember Sunday morning, in those days all the doors were open. I'd never been to London before, I was from up north. And I remember standing outside my door, just looking round. And there's 3 snotty-nosed cockneys came up. They were also 5. And for some reason, they actually looked at me and started to talk. I couldn't understand a word they said, because they were Cockney. And they couldn't understand a word I said, because I was from up north. I had a Sunderland time accent. And the only thing I remember was asking about birds, and I said duck. And these 3 little kids killed themselves laughing. And then they went away. The next day, I went to my first school, which is Christian Street. And I found out, of course, that my cousin Stephen went to Christian Street. And someone who influenced you was Miss Parry. And we, of course, also knew Miss Parry as well. But I came to this strange school on a Monday, not knowing a soul, and the teacher said, "Does anyone know this new boy?" And Alan Jacobs had spoken to me for about 5 seconds, put his hand up, and said, "I know him." And my oldest friend, and the most wonderful friend over 70 years, and it's just purely fortuitous that I happened to just stand outside the door 70 years ago.
You're my best friend.
Okay. The only thing is, unfortunately, his friendship came with something that has plagued me for 75 years. He was a West Ham supporter. To this day, automatically on a Saturday evening, even now, although they're a lousy team, they've never won anything. That's the first thing that I do, and it's the second thing that Saul does, because he unfortunately has got this gene and is also a West Ham supporter. So that was my friendship then. Sylvia had a wonderful friendship with someone who isn't here today, but her husband is, and that's Morris. And Barbara was her oldest friend, and again, enormous joy and love has come from that side. Moving along, you grow up. And if we now go forward to my next school, when I was about 12 or 13, I went to Cowper Street. And again, it's funny how you start off in a group of 90, and then gradually you get to know someone here, you get to know someone there. And to cut a long story short, by the age of 14 or 15, I had formed a friendship with 5 very special people. And 3 of them are here today. And this again is a friendship no words can describe what it means to us. And one is Barry here, all the way from Los Angeles. I'll give you the money. Barry, there's Joe in the corner, Joe Fox, and there's Barry Garfield there. And the other 2, there's Jack in Israel, and there's Manny in Los Angeles. And these really profoundly influenced my life, because I was fairly average in the class, nothing special, and we were coming up to our GCSEs, or whatever they were called in those days, and I normally would have started to work a month before, because most of the time I'd be playing football with Alan every evening. Football was the thing. And then it's particularly this guy here who's profoundly influenced my life. He would come in and say, because he was fairly bright, he would come in and say, 3 months before the exam, I wouldn't have started for a month before. Oh, I did some terrific revision last night. 3 hours. Fantastic. I learned all about the Iliad. I did 100 verses. And this would go on. And then on a Monday, the weekend, it was beautiful. It was quiet. I did Virgil. I did the history of Mr. Polly. And it went on. And the others also were doing well in the class, and they would also, and Jack Cohen, they would argue as to who worked the most. And I'd done nothing then. But this peer group, if I had to belong to it, I had to follow them in some way. And I actually started revising, instead of a month before the exams, 2 months before. And that made the difference for the rest of my life, because when we took the exams, I didn't have big expectations, but I got 6 O-levels, which to me was amazing. But 3 of them, I got a mark of 47, which was the bare pass. Now I'm quite sure that without their guidance, there's no way that I'd have got that exam, or I'd have left school at 16, probably been a multi-millionaire by now. Hairdresser, a cab driver, but unfortunately I'm an academic. And what success I've had, I really put it down to these 5 guys, because I would have never gone to university without their help. We moved after we got married. Our next move was to Nailsea. And here we were very fortunate, because next door we had Jeff and Betty, and they're here today, and this is 40 years later. And it was them that made our stay in Nailsea so rewarding, and our kids grew up with their kids. But the next thing that happened when we arrived in Nailsea was the birth of our 2 kids. And again, these have been a joy to us all these years. And again, it's the reason why we're so happy. Both of them gave us even more joy because they found people to share their lives with, Nico and Simon. 2 nicer people you could ever wish to meet. But our joy didn't stop there, because their parents were wonderful as well. We've got Rita here, and we've got Chesko and Anna. So, knowing these people, we were so lucky. And of course, we've got our wonderful grandchildren. 2 there.
Hey.
Saying hello.
Thank you.
The other 2, I